welcome to another episode of the UK Karate Podcast. We'd like to welcome Sensei Dean Hodgkin. How are we doing?
Well, I think we need to drop the sensei word then.
Okay.
That makes it seem like I'm an instructor. I think I stay away from that. But anyway, thanks for having me. It's lovely to be here.
So, might as well start as we do with everybody else. How old were you when you first started training?
That's a good question, because there's a small story there in that my brother started really with this is in the Bruce Lee boom, the sort of 70s. Only problem was I was 12, 13, whatever, and 12, and it was over 16s only, so I couldn't train. So I was pretty miffed, but they'd got a judo club and they did train kids. So my brother started karate and I had to go and do judo instead for a couple of years.
Was you pretty sick with that there that you like?
It wasn't what I wanted to do, but actually it turned out to be pretty good training, and I landed with a good instructor. It was in the same club as well, so I used to sit and watch him train on the karate class. That's sort of how it started. Yeah,
I'm a big believer actually. I know quite a few people that have either ended cross training like that or done it sort of simultaneously, and because I think like the judo and karate really go quite well together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the whole booming CrossFit now, this idea of swapping your training, and I think back in the day, when I first started training, you did karate and that was it. Nobody did fitness training to supplement karate. You might go for a run, but that was about it. But nobody was checking about weights or using bands or doing circuits or agility training that would support your karate. Yeah. But that's a little more sort of accepted now.
Yeah, I mean, like you're saying there about like band training in particular, I personally think that's amazing for karate. And I mean, again, until a few years ago, I mean, really, I'd never even heard of it. And then as soon as I'd seen it and watched, I thought, right, I need to like brush up on some of this, and was watching loads of videos on YouTube about it. It was like, right. Everyone's getting it in the dojo, and I still think now we don't do it mega often, but when you do, you can tell the difference when everyone's been doing the band training.
Yeah, I think like any kind of conditioning training, but then crossing different styles, and certainly for me, one thing that really helped me take strides forwards from when I got into competition was then going and training with the sport karate guys who were doing it in a completely different way than we were. But then, you look at the time, when we were early in the KUGB, you look at Billy Higgins. Sensei Billy Higgins is still around now. He'd come from a Wado background. Yeah. You look at Steve Cattle. He'd done a bit of everything. Terry O'Neill. You look at those people. That they weren't just one-dimensional. They were that good because they'd done other training. So yeah, I think you're right. Having to do a couple of years judo first was probably good grounding for me.
And was the discipline in judo, was it quite the same as the discipline in the dojo as karate? Like when you were old enough to start karate?
Yeah,
training?
it was. We had a very good instructor, the guy who owned the club, a guy called Glyn Jones, who was taught in a very traditional way. So yeah, it was very disciplined. It was an easy transition then to move on to the karate class.
So what belt did you get up to in judo?
I only did a few, didn't I? I did a few gradings. I can't remember. It was a long time ago, and I've been punched in the head a lot. So some things I don't quite remember. I did a few gradings, I think. Yeah.
But it was Leicester Karate Club that you
so this was the Leicester Karate Club. Yeah, at the Secular Hall, and I think it's still there now with Dave Wilkins.
And who's your instructors at Leicester?
So I had a short time on a kids class started. So that was probably because I was complaining all the time that there wasn't one. And I trained initially with a guy called Ted Simpson.
Yeah.
But our chief instructor at the club was Tony Conroy. And then obviously I went on to that. Onto the senior class and trained for years with him.
And what was Tony like as the chief instructor?
Very good, really good. Just technically excellent and very traditional. We had to do everything right. And he wasn't so much of a competition man, which sort of became there was, I wouldn't say friction, but we were sort of on slightly different paths when, my brother and I started to go away and do lots of competition. He wasn't really, he was more, karate's this, that fluffy bit's not really, I don't think it was quite his thing. I don't think he was really into it as much as, because for us it became more the focus. Whereas, I think he was much more traditional than us. So, but that was good because that was a really good grounding for us. That was,
I think like having
we had
that,
to keep
having
coming
that,
back to that. Yeah,
that rigid bit there of the I say the basics, but the core karate, and then going on to the competition. I remember, I think it was a little bit like that in Newark in the Newark SKC in the early days. I think Sensei Alan wasn't too keen on the competition side, and I think along with like my father and stuff like that, pushing for the competitions, and then suddenly that everybody wanted to go to the competitions then. Yeah. So what? Who would have been your first grading examiner? Like,
actually, somebody from not far from here, Derek Langham was my first.
Oh right, yeah.
Grading. I had one with Derek Langham, and then
I think he was Bingham.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and then after that, it was Sensei Noida, Kawazawa, and Tomita.
Right. Just a couple of small
names
there.
This was the great thing about our instructor Tony Conroy. He brought these people in. We had them at the club. Yeah. We had and actually more so Sensei Tomita because he was a really lovely guy. He was a really affable guy, and probably slightly cheaper than Sensei Noida. I don't know. So we were lucky that we used to have courses with those three guys. So
what was Sensei Tomita like? Because again, I know the name. Obviously, Sensei Noida. Yes, I remember like him being at Newark and Grantham. But yeah, I don't think anyone we've had on the podcast even has even mentioned him. So
really,
yeah. So anyone that from like back in the day. So yeah, what was he like?
Well, if you imagine technically he was very similar to Sensei Kawazawa.
Right.
Very
technical then. Yeah.
Really good technically, but he was just much more relaxed. He was like. He didn't teach. He would coach. Yeah. He got a really kind of nurturing spirit about him, and he just although he still pushed you, and it was still like training with a senior Japanese sensei, but he it seemed to be sort of slightly more enjoyable. Yeah. And he would do things slightly differently. You kind of. That sounds awful saying you knew what you were going to get with Sensei Noida and Sensei Kawazawa. I don't mean that in the wrong way, but you kind of weren't often surprised by what you got, even though there were fantastic sessions. But with Sensei Tomita, he was slightly sort of left field. Some of the things we did with him was a little bit different. And like I say, the main thing about him is just his personality. He seemed a little bit warmer.
Yeah. I mean, did he have like that a bit? Because everyone always says about the presence what Sensei Noida had. When he entered the room, someone was.
No. All three of them were like that. Yeah. No question. Yeah. And just that, there's that moment where they put their gi on and just before the lesson starts and they're sort of over in the corner, just warming up, whatever it is they're doing, you can't help but think, oh my God. There's that, there's definitely that sort of aura about them, yeah.
Did you, so when your sensei, was that when you had the gradings and things, was it mainly just your club or did you advertise and like other clubs came to grade with you?
No. Only a couple of times because there was another club in Leicester, and our instructor Tony Conroy, it was his brother Paddy Conroy, so he had a smaller club, and sometimes the two would join together. But most of the time we were lucky enough that it was a popular club, it was a big club, so they could afford to get those instructors in.
Do you still have like your old grade, your old license or anything like that tucked away somewhere?
I don't know. I might have somewhere. I don't know. I'd like to think I have, but it's been a long time. Oh, yeah. And I also only graded to Shodan and then just binned it after that. I didn't really want to do any of the gradings after that.
I don't blame you there. Yeah, no, I don't. But we'll come to that there.
Yeah, that's an interesting
point. But so what age were you then when you you and your brother thought, right, competition time, like what sort of age do you remember?
I don't know how it came about, that first one. I think it was 74, the Central Regions over at Redditch. think it was 74 or 75. I think it was 74. And for some reason, we entered, I think, 3 teams, didn't we? And that was joint with the other Leicester club. And my brother fought for the first team.
And I bet then it was like it was a 5-man team then, wouldn't it?
It was a 5-man team.
Yeah.
It was no pads. It was tough. It was tough. And that was our first taste of competition. And didn't you lose to Birmingham in the final? I think you lost to Birmingham in the final, but it kind of sort of whetted everybody's appetite for competition. So the whole club was quite, this is good. And so then the next year, we went back and I competed in the kids' kata. It was my first ever competition. So I think that was 75, wasn't it? I think it was 75. As a purple belt, and I did Hangetsu in the final. I have no idea why. I don't know what I was thinking. And won my first trophy, which my daughter now has on her shelf in her house.
Oh, brilliant!
So she has my first, and she has the medal I won at in Canada. She has my first and my last ever trophies on her shelf. But so then going to your first ever competition and winning, of course you then think, well, I'm going to win every competition I enter now. But that sort of really got us into it. And then I was just almost old enough then to start fighting, and obviously my brother and friends were all fighting, and that was the exciting bit.
It must have been good then that you'd got an older brother that like doing kumite, kumite as well. Was it a case? Did your brother obviously help train you with the kumite?
Oh yeah, very much so. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think. Probably nowadays they call it child abuse. Some of the ways we use it.
I think a lot of the things in back in the day in karate might be.
But actually,
brilliant.
But obviously some of those things, paid dividends. But I do remember one session. I'm sure you remember at the Polytechnic. So my brother used to work in town in Leicester. I used to go and meet him at lunchtime, and we quickly go over across the road to the Polytechnic, sneak into the gym. We weren't supposed to be in there, and we used to do lots of drills. Now at the time, so I started competing. I was a very small 16-year-old, and I'm going in there, fighting. Who knows? Could be fighting your dad, So, so the one thing that I needed to do was learn to move. I needed to be hard to hit. And so we used to spend hours in there with him just, forcing me into a corner and going, right, get out of the corner. Yeah. And if I didn't, he'd hit me. Yeah. So, and that sort of stuff, if you've seen the JKA Worlds in 1990, that's what saved me, the fact that I could move around.
Yeah. But that again, that type of training, again, I remember being and it would have been, a very young kid. At Grantham Club with Dad and Phil, and that's how you did it. It was the old school lineup, foot against the wall. Yep. You had to make your own space, and it wasn't just the black belts. Everyone took a turn. The whole club took a turn, and there'd be people that would just be there and just be against the wall, and then obviously you start seeing the black belts make the space, and you're like, right, they've made themselves some space. And I still think that trying to make people comfortable in the uncomfortable situation, that type of training to me is still like invaluable. I know some people don't like it and have spoken out against it, but it to me is how you will get someone to I don't know, just get better and thrive.
Yeah, there's no question. In those early years, when working with my brother on that agility stuff was really useful. But you're right about that, getting comfortable being uncomfortable. And one of the features of when I then eventually made it onto the junior KUGB squad, a feature of every session with Sensei Andy Sherry was the lineup. Yeah. And you knew at some stage in the session, sometime in this 3 hours, he's going to say, everybody turn and face Frank. And then this is it now, we're into the lineups. And even though there's probably an hour of still beating each other up to go, once you'd kind of got over that bit, it was just, you just knew it was coming at some stage. And it really isn't about whether you're blocking and countering it. It was more character building. You know, can you stay up? Can you stay on your feet? Can you move forwards? You know, it was that kind of drill, really. But that's, you know, that's a part of it. That's a part of that. It definitely teaches you that kind of warrior spirit. Really.
Was there a point? Because I like to say, with that type of training, there is a point. Like I've done it with students of ours or mine from back in the day. Some lads, you know, one of the lads still doing quite well for JKA England, you know, but it was like the thing of been, you know, moving him around the dojo, putting him in the corner. And I you know, this is a lad I'm 6'3", and he still makes me look small really now. Like he's got to be 6'4", 6'5", you know. But then it, you know, just wouldn't push back. And then I remember this. Something must have just clicked one day, and then it was like, bang! I've been hit in the face, and you're like. Wow. Yeah. And then he's just suddenly decided, I'm not taking it anymore. You know, and it was very much so like that you son obviously then you're putting it on your brother and putting him on the back foot.
I don't know. I think I managed to get out of the corner most of the time. But that was because I was quite quick on my feet. So, and as I say, I needed to be. When I first started competing, I remember going up to, and we'd fight open competitions, and, you know, I remember fighting some big ugly fellas, do you know what I mean?
Well, but it was then from 16 though, you were straight in, weren't you?
Yeah,
like you
were, and it was open weight.
Yeah,
so, you know, there were no weight categories then. So so I needed to be able to move. So it was useful that, you know, my brother was spending time putting me through those drills at that stage. Was there
a certain time when you thought, I want to get serious about like my karate competing like now?
I think we were just doing okay at competitions, you know, and particularly the central regions with your dad and Phil being there regularly, and obviously the Nottingham lot, Coventry, Birmingham. So, you know, we were competing and we were lucky to be around at a time when there was some really good fighters.
I mean, the talent that was around back then.
Oh no,
well.
for sure. Some really good fighters around. So you couldn't help but. So we were getting better and then winning some stuff, and so it gave us something to train for. And if anything, we kind of shifted our training totally then towards competition. And then I was aware. Through we'd found out about the Central Region squad. We turned up for what was supposed to be a Central Region squad trial, but it was in the early days we had no instructor. It was all a bit of a mess. To start with, we had Sensei Kawazawa, then we had Bob Rhodes, then we hadn't got an instructor, and then sometimes the most senior grade there, Mark Healy, took it a couple of times, and we had this sort of Central Region squad. But at that time, I mean, the people there, I mean, you know, Mark Healy fought for the senior KUGB team. We're talking John Johnson, Graham Millward, then obviously Ronnie Christopher, Glenn Davis, and these people went on to compete for the KUGB national team. A little later, you know, you've got Bob Manning, you know, the sort of people in that squad. So we were really lucky at that time to be, you know, Ronnie Cannings. You know, it was a ridiculously strong. I
was going to say,
squad,
like, what a time to be like training though. I mean, that's where I get a little bit like the karate side of me gets a bit sad really when you see like obviously all the splits and everything that's happened in karate. You know, like we were talking about before we started recording the podcast. You know, but you think back to then to the level of quality. Yeah, I mean, and even some people that were obviously that good that didn't, you know, maybe didn't go on and compete for the national squad, but they were still awesome. They just
we were really lucky to be in there, and then fortunately then. I think the KGB were aware that, you know, I think we turned up they used to have the inter-regional competition then. I think they have a sort of format of it now. So you'd have North, South, Central, Scotland, Wales, Ireland would all turn up with a team. And I think we turned up, you know, with no instructor, you know, all of us completely disorganised. I think we kind of let John Johnson sort of take control of it. I think he was sort of our team captain. So I think the KGB then realised we really should give them an instructor. Unfortunately for us, that was Sensei Brennan. So, you know, so then he came in. Although he then came in.
So what age would he been then when he took that on?
So if I would have been, I'd have still,
25.
yeah, it would have been about, yeah.
So he's
It'd have
coaching
been about
and
early 20s.
competing still at the
Yeah,
same
wow.
time. So
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So that, that helped us move forward. Then we had some kind of direction, some format to it. And it was then really that Glenn Davison, who was an awesome fighter, was on the junior squad. And he said, you should try and, but there were no kind of tryouts for it, really. It was just if you got seen at competition.
Yeah, senior competition,
And, fortunately, that happened to me. I was lucky enough to I had a good run at, I think it was the Shotokan Cups.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting an invite to go to the junior squad training. So,
was that something though that you sort of were actively hoping that that would?
Oh God, yeah,
yeah,
for sure. Until I got there and then realised how tough it was, and obviously I've made the stupid mistake of I'm at the Red Triangle. Obviously this is what it's all about. I've not realised it's a 3-hour session, so I've gone like crazy at the beginning, thinking I feel sharp, I'm quicker than everybody else. They might have been pacing themselves. And then, of course, then we get into the line-outs and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it was a tough day. And it used to be every month. And I remember you kind of get through the session, it'd be like, I'm going to go for another 4 weeks. And then like, you're okay for 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks later, you're thinking, it's coming again soon. Yeah. And
to me, that's what squad sessions should be.
It was like that.
You should fear it.
Yeah. And it's funny because I don't know if there was an interview years ago in the magazines with Elwyn Hall, and he talked about his first junior squad training. And then the second one, he didn't go because he said his dog had died, and he hadn't got a dog. But he was doing the same as all of us. Like, I don't want to go back again, But you kind of learn to.
I remember reading that, and then I was like, right. So if Elwyn was saying that, who like when you watch him compete, even now when you sort of watch some of those like a highlight reel or something, you're like, that guy was scared. Like, how bad was it?
But I'd also heard this story about having to climb over the beams at the end of a session. So bear in mind, you've been training for 3 hours. It's very physical, and so basically it's like an arched roof, and they've got these metal beams across the middle. And it gets to this, where you have to you've got to go up and down this many times over the beams, and you have to jump to get the beam, and then so this is at the end of a 3-hour session, and then you've got to pull yourself up, get over the beam onto the next one. It just but again, a lot of the stuff that went on there, I mean, don't get me wrong, Sensei Sherry's an incredible instructor, so there was a lot of really good stuff in there, very technical stuff, but there was also a lot of stuff that was about building character and seeing
what you're made of.
And are you prepared to go to those, those dark, places? So yeah, it was, it's the best training you could possibly get, And so I'm on that junior squad, and we're talking Frank Brennan, Ronnie Christopher, George Best, Elwyn Hall, Richard Amos. I don't know if you remember the Turners from Chelmsford, Glenn Turner, Mark Turner. Who were
I've heard the
guys.
names, but yeah,
they were incredible. Obviously, Glenn Davison. And you're in there training Miles Draper, Tony Harrison, in there training John O'Neill, Steve Sewell. These guys were just, that's the class, And I was just proud to be standing at the bottom end of it.
Was there anyone in particular that you like during session you thought, well, if you came up against them, like in was sparring, you thought, oh no, or was it all just all like that?
All of them, all of them. I mean, that was a ridiculously talented, squad of people, I
mean, I remember Ronnie, obviously, again, as a young kid, seeing going everywhere with Dad and stuff, and seeing like Ronnie fight, and again, talk about like that, a bit like that magnetism, actually, of like what Sensei Inoue had coming in a room. That was like watching the area that Ronnie was on as well. Like it's.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously the great thing about Ron Christopher is just such a gentleman off the.
I mean, that was the thing. He always had time for for everyone, and he was always so pleasant.
But I think also, what was great about him was just is the controlled aggression.
Yes.
Because people can be aggressive and whatever, but he just seemed to have you know, he was ferocious.
Yeah.
But it was totally in control, you know. And obviously, I mean, his skill level was off the charts.
One of the old Newark students that lives down London way now and used to compete with Dad and Phil as well. He was going through some old VHS footage, and he found a couple of clips of Ronnie, and he sent me them, and I did put them online because I was like, people need to see that, because talking about the controlled aggression, I think he was fighting a chap from Marshall Street called Barry Watkiss, and I think Barry was like trying to put it on him, and like Ronnie wasn't having any of it, and there was a few old digs like after Yame going in, and you just saw both of them almost smiling at each other as the ref had separated and going back to the lines. And it was I don't know, it was just brilliant.
And the great thing is, like, so I used to get the bus from Leicester to Birmingham, and then Ronnie would pick me up and take me to squad training. And then always, you know, we'd come back, and, you know, I'd be getting, and he'd go and buy me a drink and a sandwich or something for the rest of the journey home. He just was an incredibly nice guy, you know. And obviously an amazing fighter.
Yeah. Again, you know, we were talking about this before, and you just, I don't know, you don't see, I don't know, maybe I'm looking in the wrong places or the wrong associations maybe now, but you just don't see that I don't know, like that style. Even your style, Ronnie's style, Frank's style. You know, I know they had their own style, but you don't see that variety.
Yeah, I think that typified where we were. That you know, I don't know why it is, but you know, as I say, you know, when you look at that team, and you know, you'd have Ronnie, Frank, Elwyn, myself, George Best, Gary Harford, would all fight in completely different ways. We did, none of us were the same. You know, we all brought our own, you know, sort of, you know, idiosyncrasies to the battle. But yeah, that's one thing. I sort of looking at it now. You know, I obviously still look at stuff on YouTube, and and I think it. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Some of those sport karate guys, there's some great stuff going on. There's some great kicking. You know, I still don't get quite how they kick, and then you get swept afterwards, and I'm not quite sure. I'm not. I need to brush up on the rules, I think.
Or just being so close and raising the hand and jumping around.
Yeah, absolutely. It does seem that everybody's sort of conforming to a, you know, I'm watching some of the traditional stuff, and it looks a little bit static, and then the sport guys all seem to be doing exactly the same thing. I think we were lucky to be around. Like I say, I was very lucky to be around at that time. That Central Region squad full of internationals was just awesome. And then obviously getting onto the junior squad and the senior squad, you know, the people you're training with there, I mean, you can't help but get better.
No.
So did you? I know you were talking about with, you know, obviously training with your brother. Did you? You know, once you obviously started to have quite a bit of success, you're on the regional squad. Did you guys like suddenly think, right, we need to go and train with like either other styles?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. That's a really good question, because that's exactly what we did, which, you know, in some quarters was sort of frowned upon a little bit.
And again, in some quarters now still is.
You know,
politics.
Yeah, it was a little bit of the politics. But also, I mean, it was very funny because, so I had started working, this is the late 80s, I was often in London. So, you know, I'd go and train with Vic Charles. So, you know, go and train with the Sport Karate boys. And at his class, he used to have a class, a place called the Fitness Centre in Covent Garden, and you'd get Mervyn Etienne there, God rest his soul, unfortunately he's not with us now, Willie Thomas, Tony King, basically the British Sport Karate team were there. You know, this is just on like a Monday night training, and so I go in there training with these guys coming from a, you know, this kind of background, and I remember having some, you know, I mean, they were just really nice to me. They took me in, you know, they didn't need to, and I'd go down there fairly often and, you know, train with these guys. And I remember one night with Willie Thomas where we ended up having just a real ding dong. We were just going at each other, and Mervyn was teaching that class, and he just let us get on with it. And it was all, you know, very respectful. But it was funny because my brother and I were doing stuff outside, and we'd go and, I mean, we once went and trained with, I don't know if you remember a guy called Steve Babbs, who was from the kung fu side, you know, the full contact karate side. Background was something a little bit different. We went on a course with Eugene Codrington, I think at Birmingham University, was it? Yeah. So
and these are all sport
and
karate
these were,
guys.
and then when I was training down in London with Vic Charles, obviously that was all the sport karate boys, and it was funny because then, like, it was really good for me because that's the way I fought. So to go and try and fight with those guys, I want to be agile, I want to be quick, I want to move around, you know, and learning simple things like, you know, so just fighting off the line, this kind of stuff that I hadn't really thought about, you know, so that you're coming in from slightly different angles. And then things like, so if you want to attack Mawashi, then don't lift your leg out to the side. Lift your leg and follow the line of their leg, and then just turn it around. I'm like, well, that makes absolute sense, you know. So anyway, and it was, you know, really useful stuff. Learned, you know, loads of good tips from them that really then fitted with the way I was trying to fight. And then we were at a KUGB competition somewhere, I can't remember. And then there was always this kind of, oh, there's sport karate. That's not real karate. This is real karate. And I remember getting involved in some conversation with, I can't remember, it's some KGB stalwarts who were like, yeah, but it's just flicky techniques. They're not very effective techniques. Yeah. So I said, well, have you trained with these guys? Well, no. Okay, well, that might be a start, really. But I said, well, actually, I train with them quite regularly. And, you know, because you say that when a 15-stone black guy who's really athletic flicks you, you know it, Don't think that there's no power in their techniques because they're flicky, you know. So, I think there was a bit of a sort of, you know, some kind of misunderstanding around as to quite what they were doing. They were definitely training from a sports kind of performance angle, but it was still karate to me.
Bit of a rivalry.
Yeah, I think just a difference of opinion.
And maybe like the fear of the unknown because they don't really know.
Yeah.
And it's just like, well, it can't be better than ours. Again, there's a bit of, I think, probably that little...
Yeah, there's some, territorialism, I think. And but I think, you know, I think that's kind of, you know, I think that's gone now. It was, you know, quite marked back in the day. You know, you fight like this or you jump around with pads on and they're two different things. But clearly there was, you know, there's a lot of benefit to both.
Yeah. No, because I think like looking at some of the videos of like when you were fighting and stuff, because you're very good at, there's like the moving in, so you're moving in, then move in with the Agiyuki Gakuzu, because I mean obviously that was, you still see that, I mean that you see that technique quite a lot, even now. But the deep Gakuzuki of getting in there, was that something that you already had been working on, or was that like with the sports guys that you'd been working on?
Yeah, that kind of agility thing. It fitted what I wanted to do. As I say, my brother had coached me to move around a lot because I was small, and then obviously doing that. Then I seen the sport karate guys sort of identify with that, and then that helped then to come back into fighting in KGB competitions, and you know, because. You know, it would be great if you could be like Frank Brennan and just stand still and then be so fast that you're going to hit anybody anyway. Some of us can't do that. We need to move around a bit more and try and disguise it, and you know, and that's kind of, you know, so that became the way I fought really. You know, constantly trying to be on the move, and that, like I say, that sort of paid dividends a bit later because there were still people a little bit like this. So being able to move around definitely helped.
Did you ever, like, obviously with then? I imagine doing that level of like that type of training, then probably seeing even more success, like, because you're now more dynamic, moving around. Did you get like, you know, maybe even some of your, you know, Central Region teammates or just other people on the karate like competition scene saying, right, Dean, what's going on here? Because you're different now, you know. I
think it's just about people fighting their own way. I mean, you know, I'm not saying that everybody was static,
no,
you know, because there were, you know, I mean, there were some people who would fight like that, but you know, Ronnie Christopher, Glenn Davison, they were still, you know, very mobile guys for sure. So you know, I wasn't the only one kind of doing it, but that became my kind of, you know, superpower really. I need to, you know, I'm going to move around a lot. This is the way I'm going to do it, and. And it seemed to sort of, you know, fit the way I fought. And also learning early on to fight off both sides. You know, I couldn't tell you whether I was right or left-handed. I think I was probably...
That is impressive. That is really impressive, though, because you don't You don't often like find someone that can be equally as ambidextrous as fighting off like both sides.
But then you need to be, because if you look at the time, then I'm looking at Frank Brennan, Ronnie Christopher, Elwyn Hall, George Best. I can't tell you whether they're right or left-handed. So you needed to be that way. And I had a particular. Again, I didn't mention. Blimey, I forgot the Wolverhampton lot. I didn't mention Mick Lee. I didn't mention Bob Williams was a European champion.
Oh, wow.
The guys from Wolverhampton who were on the Central Region squad. But I remember fighting in the Shotokan Cups. I think it was quarter-final against Mick Lee. Tall guy, rangy. He'd just got a really good Kizami.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a good fighter anyway, but he particularly got a really sharp, accurate left-hand lead Kizamazuki. And so I just swapped to southpaw and fought with my right hand on his hand. I just kept tapping his hand.
Yeah.
And I could see him getting really frustrated. And in the end, I got him with some crap technique. But basically, I'd taken his weapons away from him, really.
Oh, wow.
So, and did you?
But it's only because I was confident enough to be, I can fight off this side easily now.
Yeah.
So, and then obviously there was the time, I think I showed you the photo, where I broke my wrist that was against Glenn Davison's brother, actually, another good fighter, Ian Davison. So it was in the Central Region Championships. I'm fighting through my area, and it's the last but one fight. Ian Davison and I get in a clash. He tries to sweep me. As I'm falling, I pull him with me. We both fall on my arm, snap my wrist. So anyway, so I've won the fight. So then there's one more fight, and I'm in the finals. So my brother's coaching me. He's on the line. I sort of go back to him and said, I think I've got a bit of an issue. I've got like bones sticking out, like my hand's limp. So I think it was, yeah, but there's only one more fight, and then you're in the final. So you just do the. I'm like, but just use your legs, put it behind you. So there are a few photos of me with one arm behind my back because I'm trying to keep it out of the way.
I imagine the adrenaline's still kicking.
Yeah, fortunately, the adrenaline is working. I'm fighting a guy called Wayne Gibson, who was on the Central Region squad from Birmingham. And luckily enough, I managed to sweep him, and as he's falling, I hit him Joe Morsi as he's falling. And win the fight, which was a good job. Although then I just went straight to the hospital. They plastered it up, and that was that. And I didn't get to fight in the finals anyway. So, So.
Speaking of that picture, though, I mean, I think it's some of the fights and things from even nowadays, but even from back in the day, there's probably only yourself, Frank, and George Best, I think, that I've seen that have swept someone and then caught them with the washi.
It's desperation. I had to. I've got no arms. I had to get it done and get out of there because I was in trouble.
I know, but to sweep and then catch somebody on the way down is like.
Oh no! I've got to tell you that this sounds big-headed. It's not, but I did do it. I did it another time as well in the inter-regional competition. But there's a story here. So the inter-regional competition. And I think Glenn Davison was injured, so he wasn't competing for the Central Region team, but he was there watching. And I fought, he won't be happy with me saying this, but Lyndon Davies in the Welsh team. And Lyndon's not a huge guy. He's quite a diminutive figure, but strong. And I managed to do the same thing. Swept him, caught him, Joe Morsi as he's falling. And they gave me Ippon, and I came off, and I thought, that's. And Glenn Davison said to me, "Yeah, I wouldn't have got Ippon for that. He was too small. It doesn't count really." And he was just like, "It was only small. It doesn't count really." I thought I've done this fantastic technique, and Glenn Davison just said, "No, I wouldn't have given you anything for that."
Cheers for rain on my parade day. But so. Obviously, you've got doing all this different type of training. It's going well at competition. When did sort of like the breakthrough come? To get onto like the the senior team.
So I got onto the senior squad, but I mean at the time, you've got Frank Brennan, Ronnie Christopher, Randy Williams, Gary Harford, Ian Roberts. There's a team there that are just solid,
Yeah.
So
it must be one of those, like you get on to that team, and I can only imagine back then you think, I've either got to hope one of these guys gets injured, or I don't know, they have a bit of bad luck, with competing or something.
Yeah,
because I can only think you'd be there and just thinking, this is unreal. To try and break, into being, it's one thing being there, training in that environment, and then going, Dean, you've got the nod, let's go.
Yeah, but I kind of knew, you'd go up to squad training. And this one was slightly different because then with junior squad it was with Sensei Andy Sherry, but then it was with Sensei Noida when we went up to the senior squad, and it's a bigger class, so I'd always be down at the bottom end, and you can't really lose yourself, but you're kind of aware that they're the big boys, and I'm making up the numbers, but I'm really glad to be here, training alongside those guys. But I mean, and they were tough. Although I think in terms of the emotional stress, junior squad training was harder. But physically, you're fighting for real. When you're on the senior squad, they're not messing about. I remember I was lucky on one of the first senior squad sessions I went up to, in that Terry O'Neill and Bob Poynton were there training. Although sort of training, they were at the top of the line and they did a bit, and then they'd stop and chat to each other, and then they'd join in again. And I thought, this is strange, but they were there, and there were a couple of things, two things I remember particularly from that session. The first one was that when we were on the Central Region squad, we used to train with Mark Healy. Mark Healy competed then for the KUGB team a few times. I think he did a couple of Europeans for the KUGB team. And he told us, this was a long time ago, that he'd fought Bob Poynton in squad training. He said he couldn't believe how quick he was. So he said, there's no way he should be hitting me, but he's, and Mark Healy was sharp. He was a tough fighter. Anyway, so here I am, years later, senior squad training, facing Bob Poynton, and he's got to attack me, Kizami, and he's standing with his arms down, his legs straight, just standing there, like miles away from me. And I'm thinking, there's just no way he's going to... And he's just put I was just thinking, where did that come from? And this is a guy he's got a grin on his face, and he's not even training properly. He's just having a bit of fun in the session. I had to quickly, wake up, and it just kind of made me realise, good God, that's the sort of level.
Yeah, but then that's like the wake up call. Bing, right, got to be on that now.
Yeah, absolutely. Which was lucky because then I had to fight George Godfrey, he's got no idea. I've just come up from the junior squad, Anyway, I'm thinking, I'm just going to jump about a lot, which he didn't look too chuffed with. I don't think he wanted some idiot jumping around a lot. So he threw a Kizami. I think his elbow just went past my ear. I thought, that's a bit... Anyway, I'd got underneath him with a Gaku, and then this Yoshiro Geri came that I stepped around the back of to punch him, and his thigh, which was about this big, went past me here, and I'm like, oh my God, this is, he's gonna kill me. Anyway, so and he obviously didn't look very chuffed with me, jumping about, and so anyway, there comes a point where we have a clash. He sweeps me. I fall onto the floor. He goes to stand. I roll to the side, and his foot lands on the floor next to my head. I'm thinking, so by this time, I'm absolutely crapping myself. Thinking, what am I doing here? So all I'm thinking is, right, I'm just gonna attack him. See what happens. So we go back to the line. Sensei already goes, Hajime, and before he's finished the word, I've dived in, Chunamoshi, Kizami over the top, and I've sort of tagged him. And his face turned. I thought, oh my God. And I'm going back to him going, please say Yame, please say Yame, please say Yame. And Sensei already went, Yame. And I went and sat down, okay? And I was honestly shaking. I went and sat right at the bottom end of the line. And I remember just looking up the line, and Terry O'Neill was at the top, and he went like that. And it's one of the best things that's ever happened to me. Just gave me this little thumbs up, because I'd had the balls to have a go, Yeah, it was, and that sort of highlighted the difference really between the junior squad and the senior. The senior squad was tough training.
that senior,
it was tough training for sure.
But again, like that senior training though, of having like Terry O'Neill there and like Bob Point, and would you say that either of them or any of those senior instructors at that time were like instrumental, you could say, in your...
Not really, because they were only there, I think only a couple of times I saw them there, because I was literally, by the time I've come up, they're coming out of doing that. So not really. Then I'd just be used to seeing Frank and Ronnie at the top of the line all the time. And obviously Jimmy Brennan as well, who's super tough, just tough, he's just hard. He's just tough, and deceptive as well, because he, again, looks a bit static, but when he moves, particularly, his Maigeris, but just sharp hands and solid, a great fighter. So again, I was just lucky to be around at that time, training with those kind of people.
Did Inoue Sensei, like, if he was taking the class, like, was it better sort of like, Keon first, a bit of kata, kumite, or kumite, then they could finish with a bit of kata? Was it sort of like the sort of like three cores of it, or did it, what was his game plan?
Yeah,
like,
it'd be kumite basics.
Yeah.
So you'd do your kumite basics, and then you'd get into some pairs work. Of whatever it was. Could be timing, could be distance work, whatever. If it was coming up to competitions, he'd then go and take the kata competitors, and then Andy Sherry would take the rest of us. Normally we'd be doing pairs drills and stuff, and then at the end we'd normally have everyone sit down, right, first two up, next two up, next two up, and sometimes he'd kind of go you and he'd want to see people fight. So that was and also, I mean, it's a really good experience. You're fighting in front of, you know what I mean? You're getting up fighting in front of the rest of the squad. You don't want to look stupid. So it's a high pressure environment, but obviously look at the sort of standard of fighters. And for me, I just felt privileged to be so I'm getting to train here for free. I don't pay for this. like it's just, it was a privilege to be there. And then obviously I'd come back, train with my brother, train with friends. But what were they doing this time then? So I'd be coming back, we should do this and we should try this.
Again, invaluable stuff to like bring back to the club as well. And did you ever find either like when you'd been to those squad sessions, or if you'd been away on with competition for the squad? I mean, I found it once, and it was one of my squad coaches had said, like, I think it was after the World Championships. This is like, you do realise this is like when you go back to, like, when you get back to the UK and back to the club training, he says it will feel rather different. And I did equate it to sort of almost not I don't want to say like a mild depression, but it was I just found it very strange. And I can only think, like, being in that sort of like melting pot of talent and ferociousness of going on, like what you were in. Did you ever feel that, like, going back to the club?
No, you see, because I was lucky. Because by then I'd already sort of stepped out of mostly doing normal club classes.
Oh, you were just concentrating.
Yeah, right. So I was concentrating on training for competition. So then I would, so then I'd train with my brother, and then just friends around us who were senior grades. Harvey Smith, Glyn Curtis, these were all, decent competitors. Ken Rothery, Jim McNair, Pete Statham, these people who were the best fighters from Leicester would do shifts with me. So, okay, I'll train with you at lunchtime, I'll train with you in the evening. So that's kind of where I was able to sort of keep the intensity, and I'd be going, look, this is what we were training on, so do this with me. And my brother was always there to keep pushing me to make sure I was training, because he probably knew that when I was training with the others, I was probably not training as hard, so he would always push me harder, so that I would go back. The idea then of, although I did still do it sometimes, but the idea of just going down to the dojo, going across to that wouldn't really serve the purpose.
No, but if you're like there, like I can see it, nowadays that sort of thing, I don't know if it's just like frowned upon or not encouraged, but I can totally see like that making that mental shift as well to go, right, this is what I need to do to maintain and if not progress even further, rather than going up and down the dojo.
So I mean, I still did regular training occasionally, but then shifted most of my training to, okay, I want to train to compete because I think I'm doing okay. So and then I was, I was lucky enough then when I left uni, because I was getting pretty good, okay at it, and then sort of managed to convince our parents to let me just train for a while because I think I might be okay at this. I want to give it a couple of years, see what happens. And as it was, I didn't really get anywhere for a few years, and I was doing okay. And then I sort of dropped out of it for a while, but then I came back a bit stronger thereafter. And
was that just a choice of like, I'm a bit done with this at the moment?
I thought I was, I wasn't really getting anywhere, and obviously the KUGB squad at the time was sort of made up, and so I was thinking, I'm sure I'm going to get anywhere, but we're still having a bit of competition success. And then, fortunately, all these pieces fell into place that, gave me a big opportunity there. I mean, I know they say, there's this saying about you make your own luck and stuff, but my story is like a fairy tale story. I still sometimes now can't believe that it happened. I mean, so I'd been, so the way this pans out is I'd been to senior squad training just before the World Championships, and I thought, this is it. We're going to have the selection for the team. So I trained ridiculously hard. I was ready, and we get there, and Sensei Onoida says to Sensei Sherry, take your team over there and the others over there. And then I realised the team had already been picked, and I wasn't in it. So there's the KGB team, and here's me with a couple of the other guys, and Sensei Sherry said, Dean, if you sort out the fighting order, well, there are 5 of them and 4 of us. So I said, well, first of all, I'm fighting 1 and 5, right? Okay. And fortunately, I go out and have a couple of good fights. Okay. A bit of a ding dong with Elwin, one with Frank, and I sort of think I did okay. Anyway, so then that's that. Then I think it's about a couple of weeks later, we have, brother and I are on Central Region squad training with Frank. And again, I'm having a really good session, and he'd said to me afterwards, you did really well. And then all this bizarre stuff happens where George Best has this weird twisted in testing or something, this freak thing that means he's out. So then I end up getting a call from Sensei Sherry saying, look, come to the squad training. I'm like, oh, okay, right. So we've got the team of 5, and then we've got Ronnie Canning as the first reserve, and then me the next reserve. So I've sort of got onto I'm now in position number 7, which is great. So I go up to the triangle. We train for the week beforehand, and then we go off to the World Championships. But in the week, as we're training, we're going at it, sparring, and I'm fighting Randy Williams. And somehow he runs at me. I drop down for a gaku, but I've caught him wrong. It's gone underneath his ribs. So, and it ruptured his spleen. So he ended up in hospital. So now he's gone. So now we've gone from, I'm not on the squad, so I've got into 7th position. Now it looks like I might be 6th because now Ronnie Cannings is going to have to fight. Yeah. And then, of course, we get there, and Ronnie Christopher gets that.
So this is in Sunderland.
Yeah, in Sunderland.
Sunderland 1990.
1990, the JKA World Championships. On the Saturday, they had the individuals, and on the Sunday was the team. On the Saturday, in the semi-final, Ronnie Christopher gets absolutely bladdered by Leslie Jensen, the huge guy from Sweden. Ronnie's concussed and whatever. So he's going to be out. So now suddenly I'm fighting. Okay, so this bizarre series of events, it's not finished yet. So this bizarre series of events where now I'm fighting, and I must tell you, there's just no. Let me just finish that bit. I'll go backwards. So then what happens is, so now I wasn't even in the squad. I'm suddenly in the squad. Then now I'm in the team, which is ridiculous. Okay, so. So then obviously we go through a couple of rounds and we're doing okay, and then obviously we come to the final against Japan. And our fighting order was Elwin number 1, Frank 2, me 3, Ronnie 4, Gary Harford 5. That's our team. Yeah, okay. So that's a great team. Elwin's going to go and upset somebody. Frank's probably going to win anyway. Gary's as solid as could be, and hopefully Ronnie Kent and myself can do something tidy in the middle. So, but then. Totally unprecedented. We get to the final. The Japanese team changed their order. So they changed their order and put their best 3 fighters 3, 4, 5. Okay. So I'm not saying they threw the match, but they clearly thought, well, they didn't just change it by chance. That's how they've changed their fighting order. So Elwin goes out and wins, just as should happen. Frank then against Imamura, which could have gone either way, but Frank scores a Shirogari with a couple of seconds to go that was just brilliant. So with 2 up, they've got their best fighters last. So basically now my fight becomes pivotal. Yeah. Okay. Because as it happens, Kagawa then went 4 and beat Ronnie Cannings. And was it who went last and beat Gary Harford? Mm-hmm. So we've won the first 2, we've lost the last 2. So I go out now, having not been in the squad. I wasn't even in the squad. Then I've ended up as a second reserve, then a first reserve. Now I'm fighting. Now it's the final of the World Championships, and it's come down to my fight.
Yeah. But what? So
I mean, so that's what I mean about. I know, as I said, you make your own luck. No, I was really lucky to be in that place. That shouldn't have happened.
Did you at any time
weird.
that I've seen like people say, they'll sit there and envisage being, if not selected, or being like on that stage. Did you at any other time think, I will make that team? Was that like in your mind? Had you sort of like willed that into?
No, I don't think really. I think just because the KUGB team was so good at that time, it'd be a bit unrealistic to think that. I wanted to do well, but it's unfortunate that Ronnie Christopher, George Best, Randy Williams weren't part of that when they they really should have been. And I mean it was a win for the whole squad, not just us that were there. But it was just really weird how it all fitted together, and it ended up with me in this pivotal fight against Japan in the JKA World Championships.
I was looking at. I mean, I have watched that. Watched that
watched
fight.
It before we came on.
I've watched obviously all 5 fights many times, and obviously knowing that you're obviously coming on the podcast, really have sat down and watched that fight, and and they've been. Obviously, I've not been in anywhere near as like that sort of like pressure before, but what did I know what it's like to be where I've had. This was the only worlds I've ever been to. I'd like we put the first 2 strongest guys out first.
Yeah.
And then there was me in the middle. First 2 guys, first guy got beat, second guy got disqualified. It was like, Chris, you need to go out there and win it now, so it stays alive. And it's just like, this is my first time, guys. Thanks.
Yeah.
No pressure.
Obviously no way near like that kind of pressure, but no sort of like being put in a very strange position. But what did Andy? When you've like jumped up and thought, all right, so Elwin's done the business here, Frank's done the business. There's a potential here that I could, win this for us.
Yeah, but you just go out to it like any other fight.
Was it in your,
Oh no, I knew it was. Obviously there are a lot of people there. There's a lot of noise.
Yes,
but that's what we train for. And bear in mind that by this time I've had years of training with Sensei Onoida, Andy Sherry, Frank Brennan. My brother's been coaching me. I should have been ready for that. Moment anyway.
Did Andy Sherry say anything to you that you could remember before?
Well, it's funny. That's the bit. That's the bit I was going to come back to because on the Saturday night, the night before the team event, there's like a civil do or something that we've all got to go in tracksuits and shake hands and kiss babies type thing. And at this stage, Ronnie's, we realise he's concussed and he's not going to be fighting. So obviously that means now Ronnie Cannings and myself, who thought we were reserves, are now fighting in the team event on the Sunday. And Andy Sherry pulled us aside at this do. So I said, let me just have a word. So he said, you both know you're fighting tomorrow, don't you? I'm like, yeah. So I think this is it, the big speech. And he said, make sure you're ready. And then walked away. And that was it. And I just thought,
Roger.
well, I just thought, well,
Right, boss.
and it took me a while to realise, there's
no words of wisdom.
But he didn't need to do this big speech.
Yeah.
He didn't need to do the Al Pacino thing. He didn't, because basically he knew that we've trained our lives for that moment.
Yeah.
We've So all he was saying was, I think he was just saying, make sure your head's in it. This is what this is what you're here for. This is what you've trained for. This is why I've picked you. So make sure you're ready for it.
Kind of like that trust.
It was just that, and I think that's the most important thing. He didn't feel like he needed to say anything to us. He just said, make sure you're ready. And
that crowd back then as well. Wow,
it was a big crowd. Yeah, it was noisy. Yeah, and that's and again that's for me now. It's one of the delights. When you look and you see Bob Poynton jumping up, clapping, Dave Hazard going like this. And that moment when my fight ends, and you see Frank get up and he walks down the line and gives Andy a hug, because we've done it, and I've got that great picture that I think I showed you now, where you've got Frank grinning, because he's just, I've just won it. I'm standing there kind of dazed, because I'm just waiting for them to give me the. Elwyn is just standing there like that, like total relief. And then Ronnie Cannings is just like that, because he's got to go next. And he's and you've got those four faces, and then you've got all the people in the background jumping up and down, and it's a real weird moment in time, that photograph. It really captures the different emotions.
When the thing that gets me even now is watching, obviously, Frank's come off, you're going on, you can see you jump, you're up there. I can only imagine the adrenaline is obviously going overtime, because it was watching you on the before you walk out, twitching, you get on the line, the legs going, the referee's telling you,
telling you to stand still.
It's literally calm down. It's just but it's just I bet, was it?
But that's the way I thought. I was, mobile as I just wanted to get moving, and he's going, no, stand still, and I was like, no, I want to get going. I don't want to, because like you say, but it just it's like you're watching it, and you can feel, I'm almost going with you. You're watching, you almost wanting to go with you, because I can only imagine. But I think part of that as well was just the excitement as well. Because I was just, I was just lucky ridiculously privileged to be in that position, to be there. And then obviously because Elwyn and Frank have just won, so I mean, part of it was just that, I was just genuinely excited at, being given such a ridiculously good opportunity, to be part of, something that turned out to be quite special.
I know, but it's obviously, you've won, walked back, Ronnie Cannings is getting ready to go out. When you sort of get back, what's does Frank or anyone say anything to you, or is it, you just sort of sat down thinking, that happened?
Well, obviously there's still a fight on. Do you know what I mean? Ronnie Cannings fighting Kagawa. You want to keep an eye on that fight. So I just remember watching the fights and
as well. Obviously at that World Championships, how many team fights back then? So obviously, like I said, I'd almost look at competition heyday, but how many fights did the team have?
There weren't many, to be honest. I think we had a bye, and then I think we only had USA, Sweden. Did we fight Denmark? Might have fought Italy and then Japan. I think something like that. I can't remember. I can't remember now. No, we fought the USA. First. Yeah, but I think we had a bye first, and then.
Yeah.
So.
No, but that's still a fair few countries to fight. Even at World Championships now, you wouldn't see. You know, not every country puts a team in.
Yeah.
You know, like when I was with the JKA, you know, like there's, you know, you maybe you could even be looking at maybe 3 teams, might be 3 fights to get through to somewhere near the semis or finals.
Yeah.
Now. So that's still a fair few fights. Did you fight in the individuals as well?
No,
just
I
team.
wasn't good enough. No, but we got some serious fighters. And I mean, you know, when you've got Frank, Ronnie, Elwin, I wasn't in the individuals. No.
Were they like the guys you looked up to then?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was in a really fortunate position. Like I say, to be able to go to squad training, have 3 sessions with Sensei and Oido, and then junior squad with Andy Sherry, you know, to be doing those sessions that were, you know, just amazing. And then I'd be training with Frank, so that obviously, you know, he's going to push you. And then he'd be coaching us on the Central Region squad as well. So I got sort of, you know, double benefit there of, you know, being able to train with him and then learn from him, you know, when obviously he's an incredible karateka, you know, probably the most complete, you know, karate man there's ever been.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen like some obviously the footage when he fought over in like the All Japans and stuff like that as well, and knowing some of the people I know as well, knowing that have trained and lived in Japan, saying that, you know, the Japanese team at one time a day, you know, were just training specifically to beat him.
Yeah,
you know, and winning that team championship. I mean, even again for the whole team, but again, I can only imagine. You know, unless we can get Frank on the podcast, not sure about that, but I'm sure it's always open to him. But
if he's listening,
you know, it must have been, you know, I don't know. It must have been just a massive thing for him as well, like at that.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, and I spoke to him a few years ago at the KUGB Nationals, and he said, you know, he said people still talk about that, you know, that JKA 1990 finals, and I said, yeah, well, you know, it's
memory. To me, that is a piece, you know, of karate history, and again, I know again, thank you for bringing that medal in for us to have a look at, because that, for me, that is that, you know.
It's okay, I carry it around with me all the time. Anyway, I don't.
Yeah, just. But that, like, if there was karate, you know, memorabilia, whatever you want to call it, that is a piece of, like, you know,
God, yeah. Well, I like
that is a piece of karate history.
I was so lucky, and also, you know, I mean, obviously, I was lucky to be part of that competition and, you know, part of that moment, but also just the fact that I was in that position, that I was, you know, that I was getting that coaching from Frank Brennan, from Andy Sherry, and, you know, and there was always this talk about, you know, about it being character building. You know, that's so, you know, the truth is that although that's a great sport in memory, I mean, you know, those people have had a profound effect on the rest of my life. That's who I am. You know, it's partly down to, you know, down to having spent a lot of time training with these guys, you know, and them lifting me to something that, you know, I never thought, you know, I'd ever be able to do. So I'd hoped it would happen, you know, but didn't really think it would. So, you know, I owe them a lot, because I'm sure other stuff I've gone on to do since then.
And that's the beauty that's the beauty of karate, though, right? I mean, there's,
indeed,
you know, we see it now, the young kids, my own children as well. Like, you know, there's can be kids come through the door quiet, you know, give them a few months, and you can see the change. You know, it's just even if they don't go on to compete, I mean, it's just the character changes you see within them, the confidence karate.
It helps shapes people,
and training in the dojo. You know, I've always been a big believer of that. You know, our classes are mixed with like kids and adults, but we do try and, you know, try and do a bit of separate stuff as well, like where it's just adults. But I'm a big believer in, again, like the kids come in the class, you know, the adults might go, "Oh, hi, you all right?" You know, and just you know, it gets them talking to adults as well, and not to be shy. You know, gets that shyness out of them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely, it definitely is. And in that YouTube video of the championships, you can actually hear and I think it's Winnie Hatton shouting while I'm fighting, "Character, Dean." Like, you can hear her shout that to me. You can also hear Jimmy Brennan saying, "Just use your hands, Dean, use your hands." Because I tried to kick and nearly got caught. And I'm sure it's Jimmy Brennan saying that. But yeah, it's this reference to character, you know. But also, you know, and there's also part of a payback due there. You know, when you get up in that moment, you know, they've had faith in me, and the truth is, there should be lots of other people there instead of me. You've got to understand, you know, that you know, that although they've equipped me to be in that position, that could have been Miles, it could have been Glenn Davison, it could have been anybody. Do you know what I mean? So you've got to kind of respect that moment and you know, what it's given to you.
Yeah.
You know, and then you know, be grateful, you know, to the people who've helped make that happen.
Yeah.
You know, what would you say, like, you've taken, you know, from that your karate experience, I guess, as a whole, into like your everyday life or your working life, like, with you?
I think you know, there's obviously a sense of determination. You know, you've got to, you know, you've got to want it. You've got to try hard. So I think that kind of, you know, that, and the kind of resilience, I think, you know, and understanding that, you know, resilience it's a process, not an end result, you know, because when you're competing and trying to get somewhere, I mean, like I said, I've gone to the last squad training before the World Championships. I'm not even in the squad, you know, but something about that has made me want to train even harder. And you go through injuries and stuff, but you have to come back. So, you know, and you go to competitions and you win and lose. And after the World Championships in Canada, I came back having, you know, won the individuals, thinking, well, I'm the bee's knees now, and it's the Shotokan Cup. So I turn up for the Shotokan Cups, and Ronnie is in his civvies. I'm like, are you not competing today? No. Oh, okay. And then I see Frank Brennan. You're not competing today. Then Jimmy. No, I'm not competing. I'm like, why are none of these people competing today? At this point, I hadn't realised about periodising your training and how you peak and trough. So like an idiot, I go out to fight, and I mean, literally 2 weeks before, I've just won the World Championships in Canada, and I've done pretty well. You know, I've had a pretty good weekend, and it looks like I'm in slow motion. I'm literally thinking, why aren't my arms and legs moving? I think I managed to somehow get through one fight and then got beaten quite easily in the next fight, which was a really good learning experience. Do you know what I mean? So learning, you know, to deal with stuff like that, you know, that you will get knockbacks.
Sometimes psychologically as well, that's good. Like, but again, like you're saying, if you didn't realise about like peaks and troughs, like psychologically as well at that time, that's got to be like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Like, you know, like, you know, from here to like.
It was a weird one, but again, that's one of those things that it gives you the opportunity to learn a little bit about yourself. And I'd like to think you know, we know that karate is not just about, you know, the physical, that you become a much more rounded person. So yeah, there's one of those experiences. So learning to deal with this, and then injury and missing stuff, and, you know, and then fighting pretty poorly when you're supposed to be good, you know, that kind of thing. It's all good experience.
I meant to say, when we were talking about the 1990 bit there, did Sensei Inoue say anything to you, like after, like obviously after the tournament, or?
He just seemed quite chuffed with everybody. You know, you could see he was.
He's got to be a bit split though for him, right? Like.
No. I think he wanted to put one over on them. Yeah, Okay. It definitely felt like that. He seemed very chuffed about it. Yeah, and he didn't speak to me individually. I don't think. I mean, he obviously congratulated us all, but he didn't really get in depth or anything. But at the time, Cyril Cummings, who was the senior instructor in the Central Region. And he was one of the KUGB refs and what have you. I had been around forever, and obviously I'd been around for a while. I remember him coming up to me after we'd won the World Championships at Sunderland saying, "Are you from the Central Region?" I won the Central Region 3 times the last 3 years. I don't know if you saw, because you were in the corner reffing, but
good old Cyril, bless him. I think I think when I competed for Bob Manning, a few years back now, he was still reffing.
Yeah.
Oh, not Cyril. I'm not sorry, not Cyril. It wasn't Cyril. I do apologise. It was what's his name? Had a little black moustache. Right, it'll come to me. I sorry, no. Cyril, no, because he left, didn't he, some time ago.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. He was a character.
He certainly was.
But, I mean, he was responsible for Ronnie Christopher, some of those guys who came through, the Birmingham karate scene were, he was a good instructor, sure.
So, obviously, through getting, obviously massive successes then, 1990, 91 as well, individual and team in Canada. So, how long did you compete for then before you thought this is not for me anymore, or was it injury that sort of stopped you from competing, or did you just
a bit of both really. There was I had an injury that slowed me down, but first of all we came after the Worlds in Canada. We had the Europeans in I think we were in Finland. And I had a freak injury. So basically, it was on hard sports hall floors. And I managed to rip the skin on the ball of my foot. But literally, the hard bit is ripped. I don't know quite how I did it. Obviously, because I like to jump around a lot, but there weren't mats. And so I've had to drop out of the individuals. And I'm watching the whole event, and the semi-finals were 4 big guys punching lumps off each other. Nobody could kick. And so I was pretty down anyway, and I remember watching it thinking, I don't think this is not what I want to do. This is not, maybe I need to go and do something different, but this doesn't look like the sort of thing I want to be involved in. So it was a weird one. I'd sort of lost a bit of interest, but then, so I had a few months off there. I missed a few squad training sessions. But then it came around to the Nationals when they used to have them over at the, not the NEC, what's the place at Birmingham, the big sports arena thing? National Indoor Arena.
Yeah.
And I've entered the individual. I've got through to the fight off in my area, and then I got disqualified. Which was an idiotic thing to do. But anyway, Sensei Sherry's asked me to fight for the squad because we've got an international team over. I can't remember who it was. Was it Belgium or something? I don't know. So sometimes in the finals of the nationals, they'd have an international match on. So I fought in that, and I looked okay. And I remember talking to a few of the guys, and it was like, yeah, I think I'm coming back. And then I just didn't really get back into it. And also, I think part of the problem was, from as a young kid, and getting into competition, I wanted to be the world champion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'd done it.
Well, you've done it.
Yeah.
And so
where's that drive? What's the drive to do?
But then that is what makes somebody like Frank Brennan the legend he is. And all of those guys who do it again and again and again. Yeah. Anybody, like I've proven, can do it once, but to be able to do it like that, but to be able to just, motivate yourself and to come back and do it again. And I definitely had lost something. It just didn't feel quite as hungry to train. And also, I'd sort of had a pause. I'd left uni, got into, training seriously, and then I just sort of started working. I was like, I really should be concentrating on working and trying to, carve a career. Rather than wandering around getting beaten up all the time. So I sort of drifted off a bit, and then I had a couple of, moments where I thought, I'll come back now, and it's the Nationals coming up, I'll start training. And so I tried that a couple of times. But then, it was never really the same.
I think is that you've made the brains, or it's made that his decision.
Yeah.
No, and I think also, I probably realised I'm not going to be that lucky again. So I'd had a really good opportunity. I was in the right place at the right time.
There was an element of fate there.
Absolutely, and a lot of input from the support I got from my brother coaching, from friends, Ronnie Christopher looking after me, taking me to squad sessions all the time. Obviously, Frank Brennan's input, Andy Sherry, and the training with Sensi United. There are a lot of people who'd contributed to that. But it just wasn't quite there afterwards. I'd had a break and I was focusing more on work. I wanted to do other stuff. Still enjoyed training, but just that, that strong desire to nothing else matters. I just want to do this. That had gone slightly.
Did you ever think that I don't know, say under the illusion, but did you ever think that you'd be able to make a living out of karate, or was it that you never thought that would be a thing? Or?
No, that was definitely not part of it either. Right. It was just the competing, and the honour of competing alongside, those kind of people. That's all it was about. Yeah, it was very much a sport kind of thing for me. That, that performance element. That's what can I do? What can I get away with? And then for me, really, then karate just, it's obviously something I'll do it, nearly every day. But it's, that I can enjoy it now.
Yeah.
That pressure had gone. I'd done what I'd done, and, I could have had another go, but I probably, the likelihood of me getting back in the KUGB team when there's still George, Frank, Ronnie around, probably not. The possibility of having another couple of lucky days like the ones I had, so I think I'd done what I sort of wanted to do, really.
And you'd said you graded to Shodan, and then you felt like you just never didn't want to do grade or anything.
No, and then part of that is I didn't see myself as being an instructor, really. Karate was something that I did for me. Never wanted to be an instructor, and also I'd seen people who got pretty good, and then decided to open a club, and then their standard went down because they spent most of their time in their gi telling somebody else what to do instead of doing it themselves. So I'd seen people's standards go. So it wasn't something I particularly wanted to do. Karate was just me. And also, I wasn't a traditional karate guy. I think I was a sportsman who ended up in a gi. I think that's where it was, really. And so I think it would have been a little bit false for me to then try and stand up and start trying to teach traditional
karate. You're honest about that. That's
and there are people who who do that very well. For you it must be a passion for you to do that, to want to do that. Whereas for me it's something I could have done, but I didn't. It's not something I wanted to do.
No, I personally, I never wanted to teach. I could never see myself doing it. I was just. I'd say, well, you got lucky, you got that lucky position. I suppose looking back now, was lucky that it was like there isn't really anyone else. I really need you to do it. Chris was like, oh, okay, never really want to do that, but then you just take it on, I guess.
Something you fall into
sometimes. I feel like it's probably fell into. And I think learning to take passion from seeing others thrive and go on and have their own successes as well.
But I mean, all credit to anyone who does teach, because it takes a lot of patience, and and without teachers I wouldn't have got it anywhere. So.
But I mean, I know you said occasionally you get in the dojo wherever it may be and do a little bit. But do you still enjoy as in just moving and keeping
Yeah,
doing?
Absolutely. Yeah. So my brother and I will still train together. I've got a little gym at home. I've got some punch bags in there. So so it's more now. So I can just enjoy doing it now. It's just big enough to be able to do kata in as well. So. So yesterday we were having a bit of a bash doing some kata.
You still remember? You're still pretty good at remembering a lot of them.
It's funny you should say that. It's funny you say that, because I used to pride myself, and I thought I could remember kata pretty well, and then for some reason, and you have to remember a lot of years have gone by. Okay, so for some reason yesterday I just thought, well, I'll just do Gankaku, and then I got sort of halfway through and hang on a minute. So I had a little blip in the middle, but I managed to work it out. But
that's
no,
what YouTube's
fortunately,
for there as well,
yeah,
right?
absolutely, and that's the saving grace
Yeah,
nowadays.
yeah.
So I must just tell you one quick kata story. I was competing in the Nakayama Cup. So the Nakayama Cup was a tournament that's held in Europe, but sometimes you get Americans, South Americans, other people come over, but mostly it's European, and it's a combined. So the Nakayama Cup is you have the kumite, the kata, and whoever gets the best out of both of them wins the Nakayama Cup. So Frank Brennan had won it once before, probably more than once before, to be honest. Anyway, we're in Belgium, and we're getting warmed up, and there's myself. You can only take 2 competitors from each country, so it's Ronnie Christopher and myself are over in Belgium for the Nakayama Cup. And we're getting warmed up, and for some reason I'm making some jokes to Ronnie and to Sensei Andy Sherry that I just hope I don't get a draw, because we were doing the Dangrade katas, and like obviously you could get Kankadai and then right now Chion, and like back to back full on, and I'm like I don't get a draw because I don't think I've got it in me to do 2 full on kata. Anyway, then I get up and I can't remember who I was against. I think it was a latter, who was a brilliant Belgian fighter. And anyway, fortunately, I've got the red tag. I've got the red belt on, and I can't remember what it was. It might have been Kankadai anyway, and they go draw. But I've got the red belt on. So I quickly just pull the tag. So the belt comes undone. So I take one knee while I'm slowly doing the belt up that I've just undone. And I can see out of the corner of my eye Ronnie Christopher and Andy Sherry just grinning and giggling because they know what I've just done. I'm buying time. I'm trying the belt up, going, trying to breathe before I get up and do the next kata. So that's my kata story. I'm just a cheat, to be honest. But there's also one of my, finest moments, I think, or a moment that I treasure was then, I think it was the next year or a couple of years later in the Nakayama Cup, and we'd had a really good day. It was Ronnie and myself again, and Ronnie has fought in the semi-final against Kenneth Hansen from Denmark, who was a really solid fighter, and he's caught him with a Gekunwashi for Ippon. It's just beautiful. And then I fought Marco Baroni who was European champion from Belgium, and I managed to catch him Jodan Mawashi for Ippon. So we're in the final. The final's us two. We've done a pretty good job. And then what was really nice was Andy Sherry then came over to us and he said, "I'm not going to be on either of your line. I'm just going to watch from the side." Now, clearly he should have been with Ronnie, because obviously when I'm fighting it's with me. When Ronnie's fighting, he should, obviously Ronnie being Ronnie, really. But it was just really nice. He said, "Look, I'm not going to...
No, I think that's...
I'll leave it to you."
And
it was just... it was a really nice moment. I thought, "Oh, God, that's... It's just weird how you remember small things that, that happened along the way. Anyway, Ronnie beat me. But there you go. Although, fortunately, I'd done okay in the kata. So I came second in the kumite, second in the kata. So I ended up winning the Nakayama Cup, which was very nice. So I was quite chuffed with that.
Yeah.
Oh.
It was a good day at the office.
So how, how old would you have been when you sort of like packed? So I'd say packed up, but like when you really like karate took more of a massive backseat.
So that would be 90s. 3. Yeah, so 30.
30, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
30 really then. And it's funny because I used to get frustrated as a kid, not getting anywhere, not getting onto junior squad, not really getting anywhere. And I don't know whether Steve Cattle used to come and teach at the Leicester Club quite a lot. And I can't remember who he said it to. It might have been to my brother. I can't remember. He said to somebody, somehow my name came up in the conversation. and Steve Cattle has said, Dean's pretty good, but he'll be better in his late 20s. His moment will be in his. And I was at that time, I was, a young kid thinking, 21, why can't I get picked for anything? And he turned out to be, right. It was in my late 20s that it all started to happen. But then, like I say, it was more kind of, I've sort of done that, and it's a long haul to start again, because that's years of a process. To sort of start that again, and that's why you can't underestimate what some of these guys have done. Even up to today, people like Joe Rawcliffe, to maintain that kind of consistency. You see those same faces, and obviously Frank, not just winning, but grand champion every year. I mean, it's incredible, what they do. The longevity of some of those guys, you've got to be impressed with. And so, I just didn't feel I had it, And then for me, karate then became something I just want to enjoy doing that. And so for me now, it's just it's about mobility and. Occasionally we'll have a bit of a bash, and then occasionally I'll have a day when I'm really quite quick, and then I tell everyone I'm going to make a comeback. Although the problem is now that, of course, there is a veterans section now, but the veterans are 40. I'm 62. I'm still old enough to be the veterans' father. So, I think I'm perhaps gone a little bit past it now.
But Phil comes and trains with us sometimes, and then obviously when we left the JKA England and set up on our own, like Phil came and trained with us. And again, I think that a bit, I don't know if you're the same, like the mindset. I mean, like for us, obviously, we all know Phil from back in the day. I know, Ed, he'll get in the line and he will give it 110%, and he will be, and I know John, he will be quicker than the rest of us that are here, and like, it's unreal to watch.
He was always super sharp.
Yeah, it's always unreal to watch. And we did some kumite, and I think that evening he caught every other senior grade with a shirigiri. Yeah, I don't know if he just planned it, but like everyone got caught with a shirigiri, and you're like, Phil, do you fancy a run at the veterans? Because I think you've got it in the bag.
But I think that just bears testament to the fact that
again. But he keeps himself like he's always been big into boxing as well. So he's always training. He's always doing something. He's always stretching. Yeah. And again, you use it or lose it, I guess.
Absolutely. But also, like I say, he's coming down, like myself, from a high level. He was a serious competitor. He's coming down from that higher level. So I mean, and I'm probably very similar.
Did you guys ever?
You know what? I think we did a few times. Again, some of it is a bit grey for me. I've been punched in the head too many times. There definitely was there's a competition called the Ipswich Open.
Oh yes, yeah.
And it used to be really good because you'd get some all-stars there. You'd get Marshall Street. You get London clubs there. Chelmsford, who were very good. Cambridge University, always good. Central Region would go down. It would be a really good competition. And there was one year when I'm almost certain that my brother fought Phil in one semi-final and I fought Steve in the other.
Well, that is that.
Because we ended up in the final. I know my brother definitely fought Phil, and I'm almost certain I fought Steve.
Yeah. No, I fought Steve, you fought Phil.
Might be the other way around.
Yes.
Might be the other way around. Yeah. Like I said, I've been punched in the head a lot. Steve was great, but Phil got to it was in the Nationals at Crystal Palace. In those days, getting to the finals of the Nationals was unheard of.
No. Again, I mean, I think with his work, I mean, that's where it obviously hindered him. Like, I'm sure he'd say said it himself, but that would have hindered him. I guess you make a choice. Like he needed to work. Most of his, key working days was a weekend competition. Well, I've got to earn some money, or do I go and get punched or kicked in the face? I guess. But no, I mean, I'm sure the club that you belong to at Leicester, where it must have been great to have you and your brother as in that club. Where I think back and think, God, I'd Phil and my dad. I mean, I always thought my dad was my dad. It wasn't until I talked with Phil or some of the older guys that were there that, oh no, your dad mixed it as well.
Oh yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
like, you know.
Yeah.
But I just didn't see that. You know, I guess it was always, you know, Phil or some of the other guys or. And I do remember being aware, like the Grantham team, like, you know, when they put a good, you know, when they did have a good solid team, that they you know, they knew how to mix it.
For sure. I mean,
like,
at that
like,
time, the Central Region was a hotbed, which is why when we used to go to the inter-regionals, we'd win it most years because we had the strongest squad.
Yeah.
Because you're picking from Nottingham, where you've got, you know, Bob. You're picking from Birmingham, you know, Ronnie Christopher. Coventry, you've got John Johnson, Glenn Davison. And obviously then there's Grantham. As I say, Cambridge University. There were just some really good teams in the Central Region at that time.
Yeah.
You know, it's no wonder we did pretty
So
well.
that-
It was a good place to be. It was the right time
Yeah.
in the right
And again,
place.
it's funny. Like again, as a
You
kid,
know.
I didn't realise I was really young, you know. So, but then you look back. But then you look again. I look back and think, because people say, "Oh, wait, you know, who taught you how to kick or sweep?" And I was like, "Well, we did it in class." But I actually just think like it was from being dragged around from pillar to post or with you know, the centrals or wherever with Dad and everyone else, and just watching them.
Yeah.
You know, like it's always like goes like you say like, how do you teach sweeping? I was like, I can show you how I do it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You know, like it's just things I think you see someone do and think, oh, I'll try that next time.
Yeah. It's funny. So, I mean, if you watch Matt Price, because he's like made an art. So, you know, someone who's actually studied it. But it's funny because
or Elwin, I guess, because
yeah. Although some of his were takedowns, weren't they?
Yeah.
Which is funny because just a brief story when it's on the video. I think I mentioned it to you of the 91 World Championships in Calgary when I'm fighting Leslie Jensen, who's, you know, 6'11" and sharp as well. But the funny thing was that I don't know why I decided that I wanted to use this technique where I run in and sweep the back leg.
Oh yeah.
And my brother and I used to train at the university in Leicester. Underneath the kitchens, there used to be this gap. But it was a place at night that had got the light from the kitchens. This little forecourt was lit up. So it used to be our dojo. There was never anybody there. And we'd go and train down there in this little sort of car parky bit. And we spent, you know, hours in there so I'd run at him and say, just punch me. Just try and punch me. So my job was to try and, wherever his hand was, to weave around his hand, get my arm across his chest, sweep his back leg. Okay, so... and he's quite sharp, so it's not easy running into Kizamis. But we used to do it over and over and over. And then for some reason, I end up in the semi-final of the World Championships. I decided to try it against a guy who's 6'11" and super short with really long reach. I don't know what possessed me to do it. But it's funny because I actually did. I remember diving in. This moment when I saw his Kizami come and I ducked underneath it. I got a hold of him. I've swept him like I'm just about, you know, thinking this is it. And then as he goes, you see him grab me, pulls me with him, and I end up falling on top of him. Absolute nightmare. So I'd actually got it. I'd done the technique, but he pulled me down on top of him. I didn't manage to finish it off. I can't remember why I started that story. Why did
It's
I
a good
start
story.
It's a good story.
Oh, sweeps. We were talking about
talking
sweeps.
Yeah.
So that was my experience of sweeping. Spent forever practicing it and then balls it up on the day.
But so obviously from the heights of your competitive career, you know, and it's difficult, I suppose nowadays because all the different splits, people leaving, obviously, you know, different associations forming and things like that. But you know, with either seeing YouTube or I know that you've been to some of the nationals before, you know, and you know, what is your take on the way like people compete nowadays, you know, or the style?
There's always good and bad, isn't there? And there always was. But I mean, some of it looks. I'm not seeing any competition that looks like the competition I was in. Do you know what I mean? I don't think.
Do you feel like there's something missing?
Not necessarily missing. Just think, you know, it's kind of changed slightly. So, you know, and again, I'm looking at YouTube, and I've got to apologize because half the time I don't know quite what I'm looking at because I've sort of lost track. Remember, you know, it's 35 years since I wore a gi, so I'm not sure. Is this JKA, JKS, JKF? I'm not quite sure what I'm looking at. Yeah. And is that looks like sport karate to me? Although why they're doing takedowns? So I'm not quite sure. But I'm watching it and I'm seeing, you know, some of the, you know, the Japanese stuff. And I'm looking at these guys. I think, all right, they let's have a look at them. And that looks very static to me. That looks like it's not really changed much. You know, and, you know, it's not the way we used to fight. We were much more mobile. But then I'm looking at some of this sport karate type stuff, and you know, there's a lot of jumping about. There's some nice flashy kicks, but I'm not sure there's much tactics about it. It's like, I'm going to throw this kick anyway. It doesn't matter what you do or where you are, or I'm going to do this anyway because I've got this great gakumoshi, so that's what I'm going to do. And it seemed a little bit like that, and not quite as dangerous as when we used to fight. When it seemed a little bit more real. So there's no good or bad. I mean, some of those sport karate guys, super athletic. You know, but then going to the KUGB Nationals, which we did a couple of months ago from now, and there was some good fighting. Just it didn't feel quite as exciting to me as those heady days down at Crystal Palace when, you know, people used to be hanging over the balcony to try and see the finals at night. It was you know, there's real energy about it, and you know, like I say, you know. Sometimes you didn't see what Frank did because he was so quick. Sometimes you wouldn't know what Elwyn was going to do. You know, Ronnie Christopher was always on it. You know, there was that. It just seemed a little bit more excitement, a bit more innovation. You know, a bit more variation in what they were doing. Sorry.
Do you think it was a bit more lively?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. But I mean, I suppose I'm bound to say that. But don't get me wrong. You know, some of this sport karate stuff I'm seeing on YouTube, some of it's good, but a lot of the time I'm looking and I'm not sure who I'm watching because they all look pretty much exactly the same the way they're fighting. You know, there's some great skill, and I obviously like the way they're moving. There's going to be good and bad, isn't there? There's going to be good and bad.
I always found, like, when I came back to karate and was fortunate enough, you know, to compete for JKA England. I don't know, like growing up, going around here, there, and everywhere, and seeing all this talent that was obviously back in that time. I don't know, like mentally, I always used to I was like, why am I here? Like, you know, I don't know. I just found it like really difficult to comprehend that I'd, you know, been brought up in that time. You know, and then obviously knowing it, you know, I always used to have these conversations with Dad going, this is it, but you can only fight who's in front of you.
Yeah.
And whoever's there is there. That's it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just, it isn't the way, you know, it isn't that way anymore. You know?
But I mean, don't get me wrong. At the KUGB Nationals, there was some, you know, there's some talented kids there.
Oh yeah, I mean,
you know, we particularly sat and watched the senior male kata, and there was some really good stuff. Yeah. So you know, there's there's always been good and bad.
It's just a shame to me now, you know, with fragmented it is, because you're like, again, KUGB, you'll have this quality, you know, this high end quality there. JKA England, you got high quality there, JKS, and it's just a shame you can't get that all together, or the agreement there in some way, because it would be spectacular. I'm sure it would.
Yeah, but again, even back in my day, you know, you'd got the KUGB, but you've got SKI as well. You know, and it's a shame, you know, you've got Aidan Trimble over there doing fantastic things. You know, amazing guy. You know, and then there was Simon Oliver, and so there were always people in different places.
Yes.
So, but it does seem a little more fragmented.
Will you see scenes of, like, you know, 1990 in Sunderland with those crowds and like that amount of people again? I mean, I haven't seen it. You know, even like when, you know, karate was in the Olympics, take it or leave it, what you thought of any of that karate, but. It wasn't my cup of tea. No. But you know, again, like you say, some of those, they are athletes. What they're doing, they're training. Yeah. You know, I'd say to anyone, try and do what their training regime is. They probably couldn't keep up. Yeah. It's just not my type of crowd. But you won't see. I just don't think you'll see them sorts of crowds for karate.
No, I think that we were lucky. You know, those days at Crystal Palace, you know, used to be amazing. And then, like I say, that. As you said, that Sunderland day, we were quite lucky there with the crowd, and it was an amazing energy in there. in that place. Yeah.
When you went to Nottingham, did like as soon as you stepped in, did all the memories come back of when you were competing?
No, because it looks quite different to how it was when I did it. Yeah, it looks very different. It's nice to see some familiar. Well, it's just nice that they remembered me. So.
And I see that Ronnie was there as well. Was that
well, unfortunately, we just missed it.
Oh no!
So we'd got there early and sort of watched. He turned up for the finals. We got there early and watched, most of the stuff, and then thought, well, they're gonna have a break now, so we may as well push off. So unfortunately, I didn't realise that then Ron was going to be there.
We were like me, my old man and Phil were supposed to be there, but one of the guys, a bunch of the guys from back in the day, had started to organise it. But then I think we'd organised it about a week or two too soon in Nottingham. So the idea was we were going to go over to Nottingham and and get there and just go and say hi to Bob Manning and watch the nationals. But whoever it was had organised it.
Yeah, no, we'd just done a few hours of watching it and thought, well, we may as well go. And I didn't realise that Ron was going to come along then, so that's a shame. But saw a few people, saw Bob Manning, saw John Dornan, so and like I say, managed to speak to Frank Brennan, Jimmy Brennan, Gary Harford. So and
these are all these a lot of people, these other people again that people might not have heard of, like John Dornan or and places like that. Again, was lucky enough to bump into him at the cricket last night, but and this must speak to him, see if he'd come on the podcast, because I can remember watching him as a kid and
oh god, yeah, tough guy, again part of that Central Region squad, it was just so good. That's why we were so lucky to be part of that.
It was such a melting pot, wasn't it?
Yeah, oh my god, there was, I mean, that was the best training you could get. I mean, it was only just a little bit below the KUGB squad level.
But right, Dean, I'm going to pass you over to Andy, and he's got his little questions.
Go on, then.
He's going to ask you at the end here.
Okay, so favourite kata? What's your favourite kata?
Okay. So nowadays, it's Niji Shio because it's the shortest one I know, and I can get it done pretty quick-ish. So it's normally Niji Shio. It probably is. I think that's my favourite kata,
What's your favourite kumite technique?
I think it's just a good gyakuzuki. One of those ones when you drop underneath the kizami and it makes that noise that sort of echoes around the hall. That I think that really a solid gyakuzuki. You can't beat that.
You can't.
Can't beat that. I don't think. Yeah, don't tell anybody that.
Edit that.
No, trying to keep that one hidden, just in case I do make the veterans.
Best male competitor or favourite male competitor
that you've ever
seen?
That
you've seen, past, present. Yeah, anybody.
But then that's going to be really difficult, for me, isn't it? Because I mean, I've stood on the line with Frank Brennan, Ronnie Christopher, Elwyn Hall, and George Best. So, and I could carry on that list, So, and then, you must have seen Sean Roberts do kata. I mean, so it's, and then, oh God. I mean, it's impossible, isn't it? No, I mean, I'm only going to say Frank Brennan because, as I think I alluded to earlier, I've been able to train with him, fight with him, had him as a coach for the Central Region. So I kind of, I've had that kind of 360 experience with him where, and then, the next minute I'm fighting and he's encouraging me. And so, I think possibly, but then like I said to you, Ronnie Christopher used to drive me to squad training, and so I owe a lot to him. And then, the inspiration I used to get from, training alongside Elwyn and George Best.
Nice. It's a tough one.
It's really hard to say, but obviously, Frank Brennan's a very special person, isn't he?
Yeah. Best or favourite female competitor?
Just Karen Finley, because she's just so tough. Yeah. And then really lovely off the mat. It's like she's just so nice. I mean, I haven't spoken to her for a while now. I did see her at the Nationals a few years back when I plodded along and she'd done the same. And we sort of exchanged a few messages, but then we haven't really kept in touch. But she was, just just so, and I mean, obviously Julie Nicholson was brilliant. Christine Pullen also, yeah. It's really hard to do. It's really you can't really do that. And then Christine Donnelly as well. Yeah. Again, it's really hard when I was just lucky to be part of that KUGB squad at the time that was really talented. They were so good, but she was just really tough, really fierce, and really lovely off the mat as well. So Karen Finlay.
Okay. 5-person Kumite team. Who would you pick? Past, present. You can include yourself as well if you want.
God. Again. I don't know if I can go past Frank, Ronnie, Elwyn, George. There's 4.
Yeah.
You see, it's
but
then I'm just picking the people I was, because I mean then what about Terry O'Neill, Dave Hazard, let's go with that.
Yeah, we can go with that. Cool. So a 3-person kata team.
If you had to pick one.
Again, same rules apply. You can include yourself.
It's a really tough one because it's obviously going to be Frank Brennan. And then most of the time, Gary Harford and Miles Draper, that was brilliant. But then, of course, you've got Sean Roberts.
Yeah.
So it's 3 out of those 4.
Okay.
It's got to be 3 out of those 4.
We've got 3, 1 reserve. Yeah. You sort of probably touched on this, in fairness, but your favourite karate moment?
Yeah, I don't know, because, probably any one of the... the few that I've said, I suppose.
If you had to just pick one.
Yeah, one like sort of ultimate moment, if you can.
Okay, then, possibly the one is. So when we were in Canada for the Worlds, I trained for that harder than I'd ever trained before. I actually gone along for some reason stupidly thinking I might be in with a chance. I don't know why. So I was training really hard, even doing things like I couldn't walk anywhere. I'd run everywhere. So if I needed to go to the shop or something, I'd run. And the idea was I got into my head that because of the different time zones in the world, right now somebody I might have to fight could be training. So I need to be training. So I'd train 3 times a day and run about in between. I was training really hard. Anyway, then my brother and I used to, trophies we win, we'd take them back to my mother. She had a trophy room. So it was always about trying to win a trophy. Anyway, then I remember being there. And for some reason, I don't know quite how it's come about, but Sean Roberts, my teammate, I've got into the semi-finals. No, it was before the semi-final, before I fought Leslie Jensen. And they were doing a fight-off for 3rd place. So, sometimes in competition you get 1st, 2nd and 2/3. So the semi-finalists. No, there's the 1st, 2nd, and then you have to fight off for the 3rd place, which means you get to the semi-final of the World Championships and go home empty-handed. Now, my job was to just go and win a trophy to take home to my mum. So Sean Roberts has said to me, he's somehow aware of this, and said, I think it was Sean Roberts, I'm pretty sure. This is a long time ago. And he said, did you know there's not a trophy for 3rd place? You've got to fight off for 3rd place. There's not a joint 3rd place. So I said to him, doesn't matter to me because I'm going to win. And for some reason, this is the World Championships. I don't know what I was thinking. I'm pretty sure it was Sean Roberts. Yeah. And then, of course, what happens is, we're in the final. It goes to Encho Sen, and I get the point. And then as I come off, he's the first person I see, and he said, "You meant it, didn't you?" And it was so. I think it's that moment, really. Of kind of. I did sort of somehow manage to convince myself that I thought I was going to do it, and it came off. So.
Excellent. Which instructor has had the most lasting effect on you?
I think that has to be Sensei Andy Sherry, really. I mean, that's hard because Frank Brennan and Andy Sherry, really. It was a joy to train with Sensei Inoida, obviously. And then I've got to mention Ted Simpson, who's my first ever instructor. And then Tony Conroy being the chief instructor at Leicester Club, obviously. But then, going into that junior squad training, and I'm not sure how it would have been just doing that without having Central Region with Frank Brennan as well. I think that kind of helped me get through and get the best of the training with Andy Sherry.
Thanks. Final question.
Okay.
Greatest achievement? Maybe we've talked about this already. Or maybe not.
I don't know really, because when you put it in, when you look at what the other guys have done, you know, so.
Your greatest karate achievement.
Yeah, greatest karate achievement. If you had to pick one.
I think it'll be that moment at Sunderland, but just for the fact that, I'll be pretty sure that in the crowd a lot of people didn't know who I was that day. They wouldn't know me. Even though I'd been on squad training, I wasn't winning KUGB competitions all the time. If you were in the central regions, you'd know me, but I think there might have been a few people that had no idea who I was. So, I think that, Frank Brennan and Andy Sherry had taken a bit of a leap of faith in putting me in there, I think. So I think the fact that I didn't let anybody down is possibly what I'm more proud of, really.
Absolutely spot on. Well, I'd like to thank you ever so much for coming in and speaking on the podcast. Really, thank you ever so much. And,
it's been fun, thank you.
Yeah, that was our mystery guest.
The mystery as to why I'm here. That's why,
thank you ever so much.
Thank you, though.
Appreciate it.
It's been brilliant.
Cheers.